Hello and welcome back once again to After the Credits. So I noticed in my last couple of videos there was a lot of microphone limiting and popping sounds, so I'm switching back to my other microphone, which is about 3 feet away from me here. Hopefully it's picking everything up okay. Hopefully we have clearer sound again. Also, I've gone to a slightly wider angle, mostly because I realized that even with this new camera, which is capable of 1080p settings, for some reason by default it loaded in at 480. I'm not sure why, but I noticed a lot of my videos, even at 1080p, supposedly were looking really grainy. And I finally found out why, so I do have it set to 1080p now. It is a slightly larger file, but hopefully that's not an issue. But it does only allow me to zoom in so much, so now you have a wider angle. You can see the full couch, the walls, and more of the posters. Which, if I drop it down to 720p, I can actually zoom it in a little bit tighter, but I think I'm okay with this setting. Plus, I can always crop it in editing if I really need to. With all that said, welcome once again. And today we're talking about the movie that honestly has caused a lot of the delay in me editing, is because I just didn't want to watch this movie. And I finally broke down and did it because I've seen the others, so might as well continue. There are a few movies that I'm not going to see this year, but this one unfortunately wasn't one of them because, like I said, I've seen the others, so might as well, right? And me not wanting to see it is honestly what caused a little bit of a hold-up, because I'm trying to see things in order as they come out. And this was kind of bottlenecking me, and it caused me to kind of delay in editing, because I really didn't want to just sit down and edit, because the faster I got videos up, the sooner I would have had to see this one. But now I'm caught up, so today we're talking about this poster up here. No, not 40 centimeters down, not Captain Underpants. The one way up here at the tip of my finger that you almost can't even see. This is Transformers: The Last Knight. Why are we still making Transformers movies? They're basically all exactly the same. They're getting kind of copy, paste, repeat type of thing. And honestly, I wish they would just reboot the series already and do something new with it. But they're not going to, because for some reason it keeps making money, because for some reason you and me keep going to see these damn things. So, in case you don't remember from the last Transformers movie, Shia LaBeouf is out, and Mark Wahlberg is in. And really, that would have been the best time to just do a full-on reboot. Like, hey, we're redoing everything, we're going to change the 3D models. But no, they already got the 3D models established, so why pay someone to redo what you already have, even if they could make them look better? But whatever. So we continue the story of the Transformers, and it's exactly copy and paste from the last two movies. There was the war, Megatron was defeated, but now for some reason the government has turned on the Autobots, and they're hunting them down, trying to kill them off. Most of the Autobots are hiding out in a restricted zone, which was basically everything that got demolished in the last Robot War, has now been fenced off and quarantined, and humans stay outside of this zone, and most of the Autobots and Decepticons are inside this zone. But that's not good enough for the military, because if they see any movement from any of the Autobots on satellite cameras or anything, or perimeter sensors go off, basically kind of saying if they get anywhere close to the fence, these things go off, but then they purposely hunt them down like way ingrained into the area. But basically, if any of these sensors go off, they open fire from planes that are constantly flying overhead, drones, whatever, and drop bombs on them. Doesn't matter if they're Autobots or Decepticons or whatever, or as some of these have been neutral, because apparently there's some that aren't on the side of the Autobots, aren't on the side of the Decepticons, but are here on Earth anyway. Where did they come from? Does Optimus Prime not know that they're here? Because obviously they weren't part of his crew. Does Megatron know they're here? Because they weren't part of his crew. Where are these other Transformers coming from? So basically we find out that the government's after the Autobots and Decepticons again, and Mark Wahlberg's the only one who didn't go stupid, and he's still trying to help protect them, even though the rest of the people who served with him and fought alongside the Autobots are following their military orders to go out and kill all the Autobots. And Mark Wahlberg kind of points that out. He's like, hey, your guys are the ones that turned on me. I never turned on you, when they kind of confront him about being a traitor. And he makes a point. So all that's going on, and they talk about how there's a civil unrest between all the bots because Optimus Prime is gone, so they're kind of jockeying for leadership. Obviously, Bumblebee would be the next natural progressor. But then, like, the Samurai and John Goodman bot and all those other bots that were introduced in the last one, when all the old school ones died off, none of them want to follow Bumblebee because they don't feel he's a leader, and they're all wanting to be leader themselves. And it's just like this whole pissing contest between the Autobots. And it turns out that Mark Wahlberg is the leader, because when he's around, they all listen to him. But as soon as he leaves to go do something, that's when they start bickering and fighting with each other. So you have a leader. Don't know what the problem is there, or why the government can't establish, like, hey, you're their leader now, so, keep these guys under control and we won't have a problem. But no, they're just kind of, it doesn't make any sense why everyone's at each other's throat. So then we catch up with Optimus Prime, who flew all the way back to Cybertron through space to meet his maker, and he meets his maker, who turns out to be an evil god, and brainwashes him to where he's no longer Optimus Prime, now he's Nemesis Prime, and he's sent back to Earth basically to destroy it. And then you find out, through the course of events, spoilers by the way, but this makes no sense compared to the original source material, that Earth is Unicron, and has always been Unicron, and Unicron lives inside of the Earth, and as Optimus Prime is returning to Earth, he's bringing Cybertron with it, at light speed, by the way, or above light speed, or near light speed, whatever they said. But the whole planet's traveling through the stars really, really fast to get here. And as Cybertron approaches Earth, Unicron sort of wakes up and starts to grow out of the Earth, like these big horns start growing. And they're like, oh, these are the horns of Unicron. So Unicron doesn't actually end up doing anything in this movie. He's just kind of like growing out of the Earth and nothing actually comes of it. So that's sequel baiting for the next one. But Megatron's back. And apparently we sort of are told that Megatron might actually be a bad guy for the same reason that Optimus Prime became Nemesis Prime. Megatron even says something to Optimus about we were brothers once, which I believe he said before in one of the other ones as well. And Optimus is like, yeah, we used to be, but we're not anymore. But then when Optimus becomes Nemesis Prime, he has like this red scarring down his face from where the evil god touched him, and he became Nemesis Prime. And throughout the movies, they're showing that Megatron has a similar red scarring down the side of his face, and you kind of think that maybe it's from the war, but then he kind of hints that he's had interactions with the god as well, and that he was chosen because she knew he was more powerful than Optimus Prime. So it's possible that this god corrupted Megatron a long time ago, and that's what caused this whole war in the first place. But unlike Megatron, Optimus Prime is a lot more strong-willed, so he's able to break the control, where Megatron is kind of, I guess, weaker mind, or enjoys the chaos once he gets the power, so it kind of becomes he doesn't want to give it up, even though he could. Things are hinted at, but never really made clear, because, again, it's Transformers. Then we come to the realization that this whole thing has to do with ancient Autobots who were sent to Earth or escaped from Cybertron and came to Earth to get away from this evil, vengeful god. And that was the whole point, was they took the source of her power and ran away to Earth, crash landed on Earth and hid, and they ended up befriending King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. And as there were 12 Knights of the Round Table, there were 12 of these Transformer Knights who lived on Earth and fought alongside them. So that's where the whole last knight thing comes in, is these knights exist on Earth, and they've been hidden for a while, and one of them somehow makes it into this city area where all the devastation is, and Mark Wahlberg finds him, and he's trying to help him out, and he gives him this talisman and says, it'll protect you, and it'll know what to do when the time is right. And we later find out that this talisman being given to Mark Wahlberg, spoilers again, makes Mark Wahlberg the last knight. So he's the last one of their order, so he's an official brother of the Transformers now. He's a Knight of the Round Table. I don't know what the hell is happening there. So basically there's a lot of stuff about them trying to locate these knights, and then they finally find them and nothing really happens. Other than that's when Optimus Prime shows back up as Nemesis Prime, and even once the spell over him has been broken, the knights start to kick his ass, and he even stops, like, he gets punched in the face, and he looks up at Mark Wahlberg's character and he goes, the knights are going to kill me now. And then they punch him in the face again. It's like, who the fuck stops mid-fight and says, oh yeah, these guys are going to kill me? And then goes back to getting his ass whooped. It's like, why didn't you fight back or something? Or he just kind of laid there because he knew he was wrong, instead of being like, hey, I was under a spell, it won't happen again. Which he later does, but not until after Mark Wahlberg comes to his rescue and fights off the Nightbots with a sword. Because, a human sword is going to battle against a Transformer sword. There's a reason this works, but it still doesn't make sense, because they're like 10 times his size and power, because they're machines and he's a human. Then there's a lot of other tie-in stuff, again, with the Witwickies. And Shia LaBeouf is not in this one. He doesn't make a comeback. They do hint that he's part of this line of Witwickies, though, because when they're exploring like the family tree of how the original Witwicki was Merlin, again going back to the Knights of the Round Table, and coming all the way down to this generation, and then they have a picture of Shia LaBeouf that's like one of the last members of the Witwicki line or whatever. So they have him looking goofy as usual, but that's his cameo. He doesn't return. It's just like an old picture of him that they found somewhere and choose to use. So basically all that bullshit happens. The evil goddess is defeated. Megatron's defeated. Why he's back to Megatron when I believe in the last one he was turned into Galvatron, but now I guess old Megatron is still alive somehow and Galvatron is still around somewhere, or was Galvatron destroyed? I don't remember. But yeah, Megatron's still around for some reason. But he's back to his normal transforming method where he turns into a giant jet plane. However, one thing I was kind of looking forward to in this movie, again, was something they hinted at but didn't follow through on. Well, they sort of did, but they didn't explain what they were doing. Megatron is trying to make a temporary treaty with the U.S. government to take care of part of what the problem is that they're experiencing. And he says, in order to do that, I need a couple of my guys released from jail. And they say, well, we can make arrangements, who do you need? And he names off like 5 guys. One of them they won't release because he's insane. And they say name someone else, so he releases 6th one. And they let all 6 of these go. And they even say he's picking and choosing people. What is he up to? And the whole time I know what he's up to based on the old franchise of Transformers, but the overall payoff isn't there. So basically what he's trying to do and what I picked up on is around this point in the old Transformers series in the 80s, you had 5 or 6 different Decepticons who were called the Destructicons, who were all like construction equipment vehicles, and they could all merge together to form a giant Decepticon that I believe was called the Devastator. They might have done this earlier in one of the first couple movies with Shia LaBeouf. I don't really remember, because I kind of remember it happening, but I kind of don't. But the whole thing is when Devastator came around, there was an Autobot equivalent, which was all of the 5 or 6 Dinobots forming together to form a giant robot as well, and that was the Autobot's counterpart. So it's like, oh, cool, so they're forming Devastator, which they didn't even call it Devastator, none of the character names were the same for the Decepticon end. But we have the Dinobots established from the previous film, so now are they going to come together and form their version of the Devastator, whose name I'm blanking out on, and they're going to have this big epic battle between Devastator and the Dinobot equivalent? And no, it never happens. What ends up happening is we find out that the 12 Knights can join together to form a giant dragon. Because that makes perfect sense. Instead of using the Dinobots and pushing forward what you're trying to do there. Or you could have had Dinobots come together, form their giant robot, Devastator be there doing his thing, and then the giant dragon, and had a big 3-way knockdown battle between the 3 that eventually would have put the Knights onto the Autobots' side. But no, it's like, okay, we're just on this side because this guy has the talisman. And it just kind of doesn't work for me. And the other thing that I didn't like was when they finally transformed into the giant dragon, which originally was said that you needed this magical artifact that they're fighting over in order to control them as the dragon. They just transformed into the dragon while the magical item was in the Decepticons' hand and still fought for the Autobots. So it's like they still had their own mentality and control themselves without this magical artifact. Okay, well maybe they needed the magical artifact in order to form into the dragon. Maybe that was the whole thing. Nope, they can do it without it. But the other thing that irritated me was when they became the dragon, instead of just transforming like Devastator did, where they piled onto each other and became a new Transformer, the 12 Knights go into the Galvatron mode from the previous film, where they just kind of like turn into these little pixel square things, these nanobots, and kind of form together. And it has like that same thing from the last one, where every time he would transform into a different vehicle, it was just all these flying nanobot square pixel things that were flying around. And that's basically how they formed into the dragon. It's like, really? So robots older than Optimus Prime, that have existed longer than Optimus Prime on this planet, transform in the way that a Megatron clone made by Earth technology trying to understand Autobot technology would transform. And it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But overall, yeah, that's kind of the story. We do get introduced to a couple of new Autobots, namely Hot Rod, who, again, in the original series, showed up around this time. But for some reason, they decided to give him a French accent. And he even says that he's not French and he hates the accent, but he can't get rid of it. So, makes no sense, but Hot Rod's here. We get a little bit more of Bumblebee's backstory. Like before he became Bumblebee, he existed on the Earth as well. Even though he came with Optimus Prime in the first run, but he existed here a long time ago. So is it the same Bumblebee? Is it not? And at one point they're talking about how he was kind of a monster back in the old days. And at one point Mark Wahlberg's talking to him. He's like, we need that old Bumblebee back. And it's like, we're not even really sure this is the old Bumblebee. And it's not just like a descendant or someone who looks exactly like him, a twin brother, whatever. And Bumblebee never really goes into that mode. Yeah, he does battle, but it's no different than the battle that he already does. He never really goes across that line that they said that he did a long time ago. So it's like, what was the point in introducing that if you're not going to follow through on it? You know, why have it established that he may or may not have been this person before, and then not have him go back into that or fight against going back to what he once was? It doesn't make sense. Oh, and Bumblebee finally gets his voice box back, which apparently he had the whole time and could use, but chose not to because he was a dick and wanted to keep speaking in radio commercials. But then by the end he has his voice box back again, which again makes no damn sense. Whatever, this movie, like I said, doesn't need to exist. What they really should have done was when they introduced the Mark Wahlberg character and got rid of the Shia LaBeouf character, was just reboot the entire series, which is what they tried to do, but they're still trying to tie it back into the stuff they've already established. And it would have just made more sense to wipe the whole slate clean, start over, start new, do more to identify Autobots and Decepticons from each other, play with the colors a little bit more so you can actually tell who's fighting who. But overall, it's just another frickin' war movie where, oh, Earth doesn't trust the Autobots again, so we're at war with them, and a bunch of shit's blowing up, and a bunch of people are gonna die, and oh, by the way, Optimus Prime saves all our asses again, so are we gonna be friends with him now? Probably not. So, whatever. So, we end the movie with Cybertron still hanging over Earth, Unicron still growing out of Earth, and Optimus Prime giving his speech again, and that's kind of it. It goes nowhere from there. It's sequel baits. You know we're going to get a sequel. It doesn't really matter at this point. Do we need it? No, but we're going to get it anyway. So, yeah. Kind of uneventful film, doesn't need to exist. So what would I give as far as a star rating? Honestly, from my own personal take, I'm going to give it a 2 because it doesn't need to exist. It's nothing original. It's nothing we haven't seen before. It's been done in Transformers 3 times already, and I'm just kind of over it. You know, if you guys like these films, fine, whatever. They're still going to keep making them as long as you guys keep watching them. But personally, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't think it was necessary. It was pointless, uneventful, and rehashed everything that they've already done repeatedly again. For me, it's just a nothing film, so it gets a 2. Alright, so that's it for this episode. Again, as always, thank you guys for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share the video. Links are down in the description. Click the bell up there in the corner. Make sure you get notifications every time I post new content. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the better aspect ratio. Hopefully the audio is better. I'll find out once I go to edit these videos. So if any problems persist through the next couple videos, it's just because I'm probably shooting these back to back and haven't edited these yet to know of any problems. So until next time, as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you after the credits.